Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a nice little 7-game Major League Baseball slate for you. Before I get started though, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It really helps the channel a lot. I really do appreciate it. Make sure to check the links in the description for Discord and other things. So let's go ahead and get into this slate. So we have a pretty interesting slate here. This slate does feature a couple high-scoring games. Those are the later games, the 7-10 and later games all have 9 runs or more. And then the 3 earlier games that starts at 640, those games have the lower totals here on the slate. That said, all these games are going to be pretty good. So I think from a fantasy perspective, so I think there's a lot of different ways you can go this one, especially with pitching. Also, when we look at weather, we do have some concerns here. The Cincinnati game and the Atlanta game both look really dicey right now. So we'll have to wait and see what those look like. But hopefully, because those games are early, they will get the news before the slate locks. That Cincinnati game is actually the first game on the slate, so that definitely helps there. And that Atlanta game is just a little bit while after, so I don't think there's too much risk from not getting that information before the slate locks. That said, 3 other games, the Boston game, the Yankees game, and the Kansas City Royals game, all look like they have some rain issues, but I don't think it's going to be too much to influence much on the slate. With that said, though, we do have to be concerned about that Milwaukee Cincinnati game and then Mets Atlanta game. And I am going to operate as if all the games are going to play for the purpose of the video and purpose of doing this. But do keep that in mind when making your lineups, as we might get information that we'll have to change late in this before the slate locks. So hopefully we get that information ahead of time though. So let's go ahead and get into our pitchers here. So we have 3 top tier pitchers and then we have 3 GPP plays today. The top tier pitcher first is going to be Dylan Case for the Padres. Now he does have a tougher matchup against Chicago Cubs, as the Cubs do have a pretty good offense, but he's been solid to start the season so far with decent strikeout rate. He's got the second best strikeout rate on the slate, but the best of the 3 top tier options. He's also the most expensive play. Unfortunately, his price is higher than I'd like it to be, but he has a good enough K rate that I think he's got some upside today, so he's definitely worth a look. But he definitely concerns me a little bit that he doesn't get enough fantasy points to really pay off for the price. So he's not a must play, but he's definitely an interesting play here. Looking at Marcus Stroman for the Yankees, he is facing Miami. Now, Miami has struggled to start the season, and this has the lowest total on the slate. And the Yankees are expected to win this one, as they should with their bad pitching on the other side. Stroman also features the best total earned runs against for the slate. The strikeout rate is the concern here, but he's actually started the season against 2 pretty tough offenses, and he's been solid, so I look for him to be a solid play on this slate. He's not a core play to me, but he's definitely up there and very close to being one. If his K rate was a little bit better, I would definitely make him one. Last season, he did face Miami once, and he scored 11 fantasy points, which isn't ideal, but that's definitely, that's what he did last season. So hopefully he can get enough strikeouts to make this useful, and hopefully Miami doesn't do enough to mess him up. But it is definitely a risky play. Looking at Cody Bradford for Texas, he is facing Oakland. Now, Oakland is going to be a popular contrarian stack today, I think. However, Cody has been really solid in his first 2 games against 2 tougher teams, and he's got a little bit better of a strikeout rate than Stroman, but not by much. And so there's not a whole lot of upside there, but he does have a little bit, and this is definitely a weaker team. I do think he can get some strikeouts in this game, which would help bolster his fantasy potential here. But I think he and Stroman are both kind of good options, but they both just carry a lot of risk without the huge strikeout potential, especially if somebody gets hot. And I do think Oakland's catcher is going to be a top tier option for this slate, so it's not going to be a must play there either. Then I have 3 GPP style plays, one being Hunter Green for Cincinnati. And obviously, this game is in Cincinnati, so that does hamper his potential a little bit, but he does have the biggest strikeout rate on the slate, so he definitely draws a lot of potential from that perspective. Though Milwaukee does have some capability in this one, and I do think he's better off on the road than he is at home, especially when it comes to home runs, things like that. So I'm a little concerned here, but I do think that he's got enough strikeout potential to be a viable option, but he definitely carries some risk being home. Looking at Winions for Atlanta, now he had faced the Mets twice last season. One game he had 33.5 fantasy points. The other game he had negative fantasy points. I don't know which version of him he'll have here. Last season, though, when he started, he did have a pretty good strikeout rate. He is kind of risky, though, so he is a GPP play, but he's a lot cheaper than the other options. This game does have weather concerns as well. The Mets offense is kind of all over the place right now, so they got some guys that are hitting the ball well. They got some guys that are absolutely terrible. I think that he has some capability here. I don't know exactly how long he's going to play, stay in the game for, so that is a concern. But with other guys injured on this roster already, he's going to have some opportunities, and this is definitely a good situation for him. I think he's definitely got some potential. He definitely feels like a high risk, high reward play, but the strikeout rate definitely helps. And he did play well last year, so I think he is an interesting option. Though the earned run potential is the risk there. Looking at Wade Miley, now he looks like he should be drawing the start today, coming off the injured list. So we'll have to wait and see if that is the case, but it does look like that's likely the case here. Now, he does have a tough matchup in Cincinnati at Cincinnati. Cincinnati's been able to score runs here, and they typically do better at home. It is a concern because he does have a tendency to give up some home runs, but I do think he draws some potential in this one, though he is a very Hail Mary play at this point. The strikeout rate is not good, but he did do well against Cincinnati last season, and that does give us some upside. Some Hail Mary plays would be Crawford for Boston. I would also look at, well, no, that's pretty much it. Maybe Kendricks against San Diego, but that's just really risky. But with that said, let's move into our bats now. So we're going to get into our catchers. Now, from the catching perspective, we have some really popular options on the slate, being Shea Langerlays and Yanir Diaz. Now, Langerlays, sorry if I'm butchering her name here, he had an absolutely monster game yesterday with 3 home runs. Now, I definitely don't think he's going to recap that, but he's seeing the ball very well. He's been hitting inconsistent so far to start the season, but he really found himself a way yesterday. He seems to like Texas as a ballpark when it comes to hitting, so he's definitely going to be a popular option on the slate. I do think that he'll be a popular contrarian play also because he's dirt cheap, and so he'll be a kind of a safety valve to throw in there. Obviously, if you use the pitcher for against Oakland, that would definitely hamper, but I do think he's got some upside in this matchup. He definitely has that home run potential today. He's one of the best home run options at this position, so that is definitely something to consider. But Yunier Diaz for Houston will be probably the best alternate for him, as he does draw some really good potential here. He has some leverage too. I do think he will have a lower exposure simply because his price is considerably higher than Langerlay's. But he also has the home run potential, and that gives us a lot of upside. There really isn't a whole lot other than maybe William Contreras from Milwaukee that I would really like at this position, because the guys that are pretty good at hitting have the tougher matchups, while the guys that are kind of lethargic are the ones that are going against the weaker pitching. So, assuming that we don't have some surprises with who gets the start today, I do think that Langerlays and Diaz are probably the top 2 options at the position, and it's really hard to find anything that I like beyond that. Looking at our next position here, we're going to look at our first baseman, and the top overall guy here is going to be from Kansas City, and that's Pasquantino. Pasquantino has really struggled to start the season, but he is due for a good game. It does look like he's going to get a good matchup here against Hunter Brown, but we'll have to wait and see for sure who Houston throws out there, as it's not locked in. But he definitely has the best hit rate at this position today. I also like Pete Alonso a little bit, but I do think that's a risky play, as he just has the home run upside more than anything. Jake Berger is also interesting, as is Reyes Hoskins, but they're both contrarian plays. As for a value play, the way that this is really going to look at today is going to be using Oakland as the contrarian stack, and J.D. Davis will likely be the option there. He's dirt cheap here, and so he definitely draws some potential, but I do think that he's risky on the slate. Ryan Noda, if he were to draw the start, he would also be interesting. But Jose Abreu is also a guy I like a lot here. I think Houston is going to be a good option, and Abreu has got some upside here against Lugo. Even though he has struggled to start the season, he hasn't had a lot of consistent play yet, so hopefully he can get some good hits here, but he does draw some good home run upside as well, and so he's definitely worth a look. Not much not a whole lot of home run potential at this position. Maybe Rice Hoskins and Pete Alonso being the top overall options, but it seems like a bit of a risky slate from that perspective. First base is definitely not the most ideal position on this one. Looking at our second baseman, Marcus Semien is going to draw the top overall play here for Texas. Now, he has hit the ball pretty well to start the year. He's only had one home run yet, but he definitely draws a lot of potential here. His price has come up, though, to over 5,000 now. But he definitely has some of the best hitting and home run upside on the slate. The two contrarian options from him are Altuve, who's also been really good so far, and Gabby Torres. Torres definitely had a letdown yesterday where he didn't do anything, but I do think he'll bounce back here. He does tend to be somewhat boom or bust, so I do like him though a lot here. He's also got some really good home run upside today, which is honestly pretty rare at this position today. So I do think that those top three are the best overall guys. But as far as like kind of a contrarian plays, G-Law for Oakland will be interesting. So will Jeff McNeil for the Mets. And then Albies will be a very contrarian option on the slate for Atlanta. Looking at third baseman, Austin Riley comes off as the top overall play. He looks like a home run or bust type of play today. He's got a huge amount of home run upside, and that definitely gives him a lot of potential. He's been silently doing pretty good late the last few games. 3 of the last 4 games, he's been double-digit fantasy points. That bodes well for what we want here, and so he's definitely interesting here. Toro for Oakland is going to be a contrarian play today. Oakland is going to be a popular contrarian stack, and so I do think he's got some upside. But we'll have to wait and see what that looks like as we go forward. Looking at Alex Bregman, Bregman does draw some really good potential at this position. He doesn't have the home run upside that Riley does, but he definitely looks interesting on the slate. I do think he's going to be pretty popular as a result as well. Looking at Majerial for the Cubs and Morel for the Cubs, they also have uh, some some interesting potential today, as they're going to be a little bit sneaky play as kind of a sneaky stack, I think, there with the Cubs. Moving into shortstops, we're going to start with top overall guy in Bobby Witt Jr. Witt has just been absolutely phenomenal to start the season. He's got a ton of upside here. Now, the home run upside is not as good as it's been, but he does draw a lot of potential today, so he's definitely worth a look. I do think he's one of my favorite plays on the slate, but again, like I said, he's got stolen base upside, not so much home run potential today, but that's okay. We'll have to wait and see who the pitcher is first for Houston. But if it is Hunter Brown, then I definitely think he's a great option. A good contrarian of him is Carlos Seager. Corey Seager. I don't know how to say Carlos. For Texas, he looks like a solid option today. Also has decent home run potential. But a couple of value plays. We're going to look at shoot, uh, uh, Allen for Oakland, and then also Swanson for the Chicago Cubs. I think the Cubs are going to be a sneaky play today as kind of a contrarian option as well, and they might be a little bit safer than the Oakland A's. But I do think that Swanson has some utility today, assuming that he gets a good start here. Also, Reyes for the Boston. Uh, for Boston has some interesting upside today, despite the fact he hasn't done much to start the year. He looks like if he does draw a start, he'll be somebody to consider on the slate. Um, Also, we'll look at Jackson Holiday, who should get his first start today um, for Baltimore as being called up. It looks like he might get an opportunity today, and if that's the case, then he would definitely be a great kind of a value play to hit into a spot that really doesn't have the best potential here when it comes to fantasy wise, especially if you're trying to find cheap options. There's not a whole lot to love, and he really does look like he has some potential to be a start today. And if that's the case, he'll be in some of my lineups for sure. Looking at outfielders, we have a lot of good options at the top here with Alvarez, Acuna, and Aaron Judge, all having absolutely phenomenal upside. Now, Acuna has really not hit the home run home run yet, but he had a phenomenal 3 stolen base day yesterday. scored 31 fantasy points, got a couple hits. I look for him to have a similar type of day again. If he can finally get his home run, though, that would definitely help. He is extremely expensive and hard to roster, though. Alvarez does look like a great play today as well. He has a lot of home run potential. He has been absolutely crushing the ball lately. It's hard to ignore him. He's had 7 hits in the past 2 games. He's going to have another big game here, and I expect him to. He's actually underpriced, which is shocking for his potential here. Ian Happ jumps off the page to me today. He's still a little more pricey, but he looked pretty good yesterday, and he didn't do particularly great. He looks a lot better today, as he has a lot of home run potential and a lot of good upside in this game. So he's somebody I really like a lot. Like I said, the Cubs are going to be a sneaky stack today, and he's definitely going to fit that bill. Brandon Nemo looks really solid again for the Mets against Atlanta. Now, he struggled so far to start the season, but he had a big game in the first game against Atlanta. Yesterday, he struck out a couple times. I don't think he's going to have that big of a struggle today. I think he'll get some hits, and so he'll be somebody that's worth a look. If Rooker was to play for Oakland, he would definitely be somebody to consider, but he's still day to day. I don't know that he'll play or not. Going down the list here, Langford for Texas is interesting. Carter for Texas is interesting, and so is Zuna and Santander and McCormick. Now, if we look at the leverage plays here, Alvarez, Nevin for Oakland, Tucker for Houston, Houston stack with McCormick, or even a Cubs stack with Bellinger, or a Met stack with Nemo. That all looks interesting today. And then obviously that Oakland stack. Oakland is going to be really weird for this slate, so especially if any of these games get knocked out, because they will become a relatively popular stack on the slate. With that said, guys, I do think we have some. It's going to be an interesting slate because you can, utilize Hunter Green, Crawford, and Case, and then you also have some good value plays and Winans and Miley. Stroman also looks somewhat interesting. So there's a lot of things that we can like in the pitching. The pitching that absolutely looks awful though, and Weathers, Quintana, Stripling, Irvin, Lugo, and Hendricks. Those are all the games that you're going to want to stack guys against. So the Yankees, Atlanta, Texas, Boston, Houston, San Diego, all look like that they have some upside on the slate. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys. Hey, Fresh, thanks a lot for your comments. Yeah, I think Jackson Holiday is definitely going to be an interesting option today. Uh, it should be an interesting slate. Hopefully everybody does well. We've been absolutely crushing it the last couple days, so hopefully we can continue on. Thanks for checking out the stream, man. Really appreciate it. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here.